Hello, everybody. I'm Butch Stearns of the Pulse Network.
Hi, I'm Hanson Liu from SAP.
And we are here to bring you the latest episode of the Customer Edge. What is the Customer Edge? Well, the Customer Edge is actually a community. It is a vibrant community that's there for you to help you strive to re-examine the customer experience that you are providing to your customers. It's actually a website, customeredgetv.com. And if you go there, you'll see what I'm talking about. We strive to help you re-examine the customer experience you provide to your customers. And we do it with social engagement and collaboration from you in this community, partly based on this show, the Customer Edge Show. And the show is a monthly webisode where we help you learn from the latest trends, the latest tools, and the latest thinking around the customer experience. Our goal, very simply, is to keep you informed, to keep you educated, and maybe even to keep you inspired when it comes to re-examining the customer experience. Hanson Liu, you are the Director of CRM Product Marketing for SAP. When it comes to customer experience, when it comes to giving customers the edge, this is something that you're pretty passionate about because you live this on a daily basis.
Definitely, definitely. I mean, at SAP, I think we pride ourselves really on being out there, listening to what people are saying, listening to what our customers are saying, listening to what our partners might be saying, our prospect, and even listening to what our competitors are doing. So really knowing what's happening and be engaged in that conversation.
So again, the Customer Edge is a monthly webisode. CustomerEdgeTV.com is a community you can be involved with. And this show feeds that community. In particular on this show, we want you involved in the conversations. And here's all you need to do that. Go to Twitter and use the hashtag Customer Edge and follow the conversation while this show is going on. When the show is over, through the community, you can follow all the conversations that are going on Twitter by simply using the hashtag Customer Edge. Now let's talk about this particular show and the topic of this show, Hanson. It's winning the hearts of the 21st century customer when it comes to customer service. So let's talk about the 21st century customer. We are consumers, all of us, and when we think of customers today and consumers today, we all have the power now, don't we? Talk about that.
Exactly. We have the power. We got the power, like He-Man said, right? You know, as customers today, and you and I are consumer and business, we are connected. We are doing everything and everything all the time, whether we're at dinner, whether we're in the meeting. You've seen people in the meeting, you know, taking out their phone and checking on things. You're out shopping, you're doing that. So you're sharing, you're connecting, you're looking for information, and you're voicing your opinions.
So when we think about this change in behavior, if you will, of customers, from a brand's perspective, there are great challenges and great opportunities also to deal and reach with these customers, isn't it?
Yep, exactly. So I think the biggest challenge, I think, for brands, which is the ever extending expectations that customers, you and I have, like you and I, all companies are having. The expectations are rising constantly. And there are companies that meet them. And when they're met, they kept rising. So really the opportunities for those leaders to really jump out there and meet those expectations and grab that customer for life.
Quick programming reminder for those of you out there who are watching this show live. We are coming to you live at 11 o'clock Eastern Time here on Tuesday on the East Coast from our Pulse Network studios in Canton, Mass. To follow the conversation, refresh your browser to follow the Twitter conversation on the right side of the screen if you can't see it up there already. Let's talk about the role of social media when it comes to the 21st century customer. I mean, in general, and very specifically, social media is huge when it comes to all of this, isn't it?
It's huge. I mean, let's step back, right? So the internet allows us to really connect and buy from vendors that we haven't bought before. And then comes social. Social now are allowing you and I to connect with people that we don't know, you and I to share and to voice our opinions to what we think of the service that we have experienced and the stuff that we bought, whether good or bad. So really it opens up a whole new channel for brands to really engage with customer and delivering service with that channel.
And coming up on this show with Hanson and I, we will have three very special guests coming up. Shep, Hyken, customer service expert, author, a best-selling author. We'll also have Brent Leary, co-founder and partner of CRM Essentials with some research annual research that SAP sponsors that we'll talk about with this, and Crispy Espindola, the Director of Knowledge Management and Social Customer Support with T-Mobile. And we'll look at T-Mobile as an individual case study. But first, our trends segment with Hanson and I. Let's dive into this, Hanson. We're going to talk about 3 trends. And the first trend we talk about is personalization, if you will. And we go to an article on CNET, an article that's written by Chris Matizik, I believe I pronounced his name right, and he cites in this article, which is entitled, "If Only All Customer Service Reps Were Like Captain Mike" from Netflix. He cites 3 specific customer service examples, one with Rockstar Games, who makes Grand Theft Auto, another one with Netflix, and another one that he cites with LinkedIn. A couple of them that were bad experience, but let's talk about, first of all, how consumers will talk and share great experiences and great marketing. And that was the example he had from Netflix here, isn't it?
Right. And he really shows an example of what brands and company would do to really deliver that personalized experience, to really make it fun. I mean, think about it, right? When we have to call for customer service, it's not something we like to do. We run into a problem and we're looking for help.
Right.
And we're hoping that we can get help. And the experience, the example from Netflix, he turns that really potentially negative experience into a fun one. In this case, he plays the role of a captain from a starship, for the Trekkie in all of us that knows about the reference here, right? Captain Mike.
Yeah, so somebody called up, they wanted customer service, they got to him, and he introduced himself as Captain Mike from the good ship Netflix. And the customer bought off on it, liked it right away, or he won him over right away.
Yeah. And really, if you follow the conversation down the line, he didn't really quite solve the problem. He basically said, we'll look into the situation, we'll address it when we find it. But what he does is he really turned that situation around into a very positive one. And if you follow the conversation, at the end of the conversation, basically, are you a loyal customer? And
right.
Say, yes.
And then the opposite side of that is customers will also talk and share bad experiences. And in this article, Chris talks about a bad experience he had with LinkedIn, where he ended up getting frequently asked questions that were sent to him, or at least he felt like it was that. But then he also says that he was told he would have to be discussed with the internal research team from LinkedIn. I mean, so when you have a bad customer experience, like Chris did here with LinkedIn, that can go a long way too.
Definitely. And I always say, Butch, a bad experience will take a lot of marketing dollars and a lot of positive ones to really neutralize it. And in this case with LinkedIn, he didn't even get an answer. And then they turned around and wanted to ask him to give them a rating of how good it was. Now, I have no personal experience with LinkedIn, but that's not really the way to conduct customer service.
Right. And then if you do customer service the right way, as we talked about good and bad, you can take a critic and turn them into an advocate. You take a bad experience and turn it into a good experience, can't you?
Yep.
That's the value of it, really.
That is the values of it. I mean, interacting with customers is something that every company really should value. And when you have that opportunity, make the best of it. Really deliver that experience that customer wants.
All right, let's go to our second trend. And our second trend is really a bunch of them, real time. And sort of, we summed it up under that from the article. This comes from Market Watch and an article written by Quentin Fottrell. And it's entitled, "As Twitter Goes Public, More Tweets Go Private." But really, it's a mentality here to think about. We all grew up using the phone, calling that 800 number and dreading who's going to be on the other end. Now on Twitter in particular, and social media in general, you could send a direct message. You can go directly to the company and get a response. It's up to the companies on how they're going to respond.
Exactly. I mean, this is what Twitter is announcing is really showcasing and supporting the fact that social media is now really the mainstream channel for delivering customer service. So it's no longer, customers no longer have to call, reach for the phone and call the 800 number. They can just on Twitter basically say, hey, I have a problem. And now brands and companies can actually respond to them, just like email.
But every statistic we see, most companies still are not doing an acceptable job of it. Why?
I think there's probably a couple of reasons. One is that some companies are still believing that social media are still a hype, right? Not something that they would consider something their customers are using. And I think that's wrong. I think all customers out there, whether you're in B2B, B2C or B2B, your customers are out there talking, whether you're engaged or not. Two, it's actually not easy to deliver that experience in social media. So for companies to do that, they really need to have the systems in place, the process in place that allow them to really deliver that experience over social media.
Our third trend we want to get into here on the Customer Edge is an approach, if you will, a customer-centric approach. And for this, we refer to Shep Hyken's blog, and it was actually a guest blog that was written on Shep Hyken's blog. John DeJulius wrote it, and Shep shared it. And he starts the blog very interesting. He says, write it down in capital letters. Everything is our problem. John says in Shep's blog to write it down and to shout it out loud. Let's talk about the approach of having a customer-centric approach. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so what he's saying here, Butch, is that vendor and company really needs to deliver their service and the process from a customer perspective. Do everything from that perspective, right? What does the customer need? What problem might they encounter? And then build your process around that to solve that problem, right? So he gives an example, right? A good example, we all know Disney. But the example here was how Disney was able to figure out that, hey, a lot of customers get lost in the parking lot while coming back because it's so huge. And I've experienced it. It's like, oh, where did you park the car again? So they've designed a process where they drive around looking for lost customers and help them find a car. I mean, what kind of experience is that?
Well, he also gives a general example that Disney is specific about hospitals and how hospitals oftentimes or for years have always had that, well, my time is more important than your time mentality. You'll come on our schedule, you'll do that. Even a hospital now has to take a different approach, has to have a customer-centric approach, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Because heck, if you're not happy with this doctor or this hospital,
right. We have choices.
You go to another one. It's pretty easy. I think in the past, a lot of customers feel like there's something called switching costs, right? Where if you have to switch the store that you're buying from or the service that you get from, there's a cost associated with that. But that switching cost has dramatically been reduced by all this information and all this access that's made available to us now.
You are watching the Customer Edge here from the Pulse Network. I'm Butch Stearns. Alongside is Hanson Liu. We are talking about the 21st century customer and winning their hearts through great customer experience. We have a bevy of guests also on this show, and let's bring in our first one now. He is Brent Leary, the co-founder and partner of CRM Essentials. Brent, with SAP sponsoring it, has for 4 years now produced some invaluable research called the Social Customer Engagement Index, and that's what we're going to talk about with Brent. Now, Brent, welcome to the program.
Hey, Butch, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself for people that don't know about CRM Essentials and about you.
Sure. Well, as you said, my company is CRM Essentials. We're based here in Atlanta, and we focus in on the CRM industry, how to use leverage customer relationship management strategies and tools, and really looking at the impact that social media is having on customer engagement. So as you can see, over the last several years, things have gone really interesting when it comes to marrying customer engagement, CRM technology, mobile technology, the cloud, and of course, social media.
So before I turn you over to Hanson, and I know you're ready for him, tell us a little bit more in general about the Social Customer Engagement Index. This is the 4th year now, correct? It's also, the information isn't being released till later here in 2013. We're doing this show live in October. Tell us a little bit more about the how and the why of the Social Customer Engagement Index.
So the Social Customer Engagement Index was started with Social Media Today, and as you mentioned, sponsorship from SAP. And the whole idea was there was a lot of research and information on just general use of social media from more of a marketing and a promotional perspective. But what we wanted to look at was how was social media starting to impact customer service, customer experience. And so we decided back in 2010, let's start finding out, let's start asking the professionals that are right there, in the fight, so to speak, to see how their companies were doing. How were they approaching using social media in traditional customer support Were they looking at it from a separate kind of one channel thing, or were they integrating it? What was the impact it was having? How difficult was it? And so we started back in 2010, and I think the first year we had about 118 people take the survey. Fast forward to this year, we had over 1,000 people take the survey. So we have a lot more information, a lot more data at our disposal. And this year's results were really interesting compared to some of the other results.
Wow, wow, Brent. So I know you're not going to give away all the findings from that study, but what are some of the key findings, maybe one or two nuggets that you can share with our audience today?
Well, I think the thing that really interested me, or maybe was the most impactful, was we added some questions to find out how strategically aligned social customer service was to the overall company's strategy and the overall company's social strategy. So we looked at it from was it fully aligned? And then we also looked at were the processes fully integrated between just social service and other functions in the company, and also looking at how our teams, how our people, are they integrated or are they still one-off channels? And so we found that companies that were able to integrate strategy, processes, and people saw the most benefit and reported having the most impact from their social engagement. So, and that went across the board for small companies all the way up to bigger companies. As a matter of fact, bigger companies, when they were able to do that, fully integrated is what I call it, they really saw big impact over the general population and other big companies. That's one thing. And I think also looking at it from a standpoint of communities, companies that had their own branded communities, or they own the community as opposed to just leveraging Facebook and Twitter and those other big communities, but companies that actually had resources and put together their own communities saw really big impact. Everybody's using Facebook and Twitter, even from a support perspective. We saw that in the study. About 80%, I think actually 90% of people said they are using Facebook in some capacity for social support. And close to that, but not at that level, was Twitter. But what we found were companies that had their own communities. They actually were more effective than the overall population by far. But you're looking at a slide right there. Look at the big drop off when you look at Facebook. Folks who are the general population, Facebook hands down most effective. But it's around neck and neck when you look at just those companies that have their own community as well as using Facebook. So having that really gives them a chance to transfer some of the top line communications to have a little bit more intimate and deeper discussions on their own community. So that's why it seems to be very important with companies to figure out a strategy that begins having their own piece of ground to have these communications.
Well, it's interesting, Hanson, you hammered this off the top, the importance of social media. And now the findings that he's pointing to, the prioritized findings that Brent's leading us to, are about the ones that do have their own communities and the ones that are using it right. The benefits are exponential.
Yeah. I mean, you can see that. I mean, it sounds as if, Brent, that everybody's using social media. Is that true?
You don't find many that aren't at this point. Now, we didn't get into the depth and level, although we did ask the questions about, are they integrating into an overall strategy? Are they integrating into an overall group? Even the integrated processes. So we asked some pretty high level questions. Almost everybody is using it in some fashion or other. The ones who are more effective, they have put in a little bit more time. They have more people involved, and they have integrated into the overall strategy. So I think there's certain levels of usage, but everybody is using it at some way or in some form or fashion.
So how quickly are they responding? Are they getting back to them like they normally do in emails in 24 hours or?
Well, one of the questions we did ask was, how quickly are you able to respond now? And the overall population, and we didn't have it quite as fine-grained as 30 minutes or under 30 minutes. We'd had it under an hour. And so 27% said that they are able to respond to customers on social channels within 60 minutes. But if you look at the folks who are, as I call, in the very satisfied group, and that was a question we asked, how satisfied are you with your company's efforts? When the folks who are in that category were much higher than that. They're almost twice as likely to be able to answer in 60 minutes or less. So once again, it seems that companies that have a strategy and have it integrated into the overall corporate culture and strategy seem to have much more results, better results, even when it comes to responding. And Hanson, you said something that was really interesting. Sometimes being able to respond quickly is half the battle. Even if you're not able to solve the question in a short amount of time, if you're able to respond quickly and I think show that you are on the job and keep the communication open, you have a much more likely success for a chance for having them feel like their expectations are being met.
We are talking with Brent Leary, who is the co-founder and president of a partner, excuse me, of CRM Essentials. We're talking specifically here on the Customer Edge about this year's annual Social Customer Engagement Index study that's going to be released later this year. More than 1,200 companies were sent this survey. Nearly 1,000 of them responded. Brent, we're talking about large and small companies. You're giving some of the findings and releasing them here on the show before they came out. And in our pre-call, Hanson and Brent, before this, I want to cite this stat when you were talking about response time that we talked about from Edison Research. Consumer expectations when looking for customer support through social media. So when I send that tweet out with a complaint to the brand that I'm not happy with, 32% of consumers expect a response within 30 minutes. This is according to Edison Research. 42% expect a response within 60 minutes. And the third part blows my mind because we all grew up in an era where you couldn't get anybody on a night or a weekend. But 57% expect the same response time on nights and weekends from brands. Both of you guys, what does that stat say to us?
I guess speed is really a key success factor here, right? Being able to respond quickly, and maybe like Brent said, just to respond and say, hey, we heard you, we care, we're looking into it. That's almost, it seems like that's definitely one of the key success factor. So yeah, Brent, any other one that you found from the study?
I'll just say this, I don't know if we can overstate the importance of speed. I have a little saying, speed thrills and the lack of it kills. And because we're in a society with this great technology where you can buy a book, have it downloaded, and start reading it within a minute, the expectations are always going to be amped up for better, faster. Faster equals better in a lot of instances. So that I don't think we can underestimate that. And being able to deliver on that is always going to be critical for meeting expectations going forward.
All right. So what's the takeaway here, Brent?
Well, I think the main takeaway is that if you really want to improve or increase the likelihood of finding success, being able to meet service goals, objectives, and expectations of customers and create those kind of experiences that will keep them longer, you have to have a strategy that's integrated fully right at the top, a culture right at the top that is accepting of social and mobile and providing the right experiences for customers. And being able to be flexible and agile because customer expectations, as we said a number of times, are constantly increasing, they're changing. So you have to create a structure, a strategy, and processes and use the technology to implement all this in such a way that it's constantly able to move with the customer. Because if you're not able to do that, you're not able to stay connected with them long enough. They'll drop off as a customer, and then you'll be in the cycle of customer acquisition and how expensive is that? It's always very much more expensive to acquire new customers than it is to keep the ones you have, and then take those that you have and create loyalty and then turn them into advocates. And so you have to have a fully integrated strategy, not just social service, but everything involved in the company to make sure that that customer journey and the customer life cycle is extended as long as possible. And social and mobile, they play huge parts in that today.
So Brent, how about a final comment and information from you on the way out here about, as a reminder, again, the survey is completed, but the findings are going to be released sometime in November, correct? And then almost a comment from you too about, this is the 4th year you've been doing this, sponsored by SAP. It's been a learning experience, I would imagine, for you and for everybody each year. It must be something you're proud of.
Well, first of all, let me thank Social Media Today and SAP for coming on this journey, because you learn so much, and having 4 years under our belt with this, it's really some surprises and some really cool tweaks and turns along the way. But one thing I think is really interesting over the 4 years, the one thing that's been pretty consistent, we always ask what are the main challenges that companies face when they're implementing social service and social into different parts of the business. Managing resources remains the number one thing. We ask them about technology, we ask them about getting management buy-in, we ask them about all sorts of things. But managing resources, resource allocation, big company, small company, across the industry, that continues to be the main challenge. And when you think about it, I guess it makes sense, because 4 years ago, 5 years ago, there were no iPhones, or excuse me, there were no iPads. There were barely some iPhones. Facebook was what, about 5 million people compared to a billion. Right. So the landscape has changed dramatically, and companies have to try to figure out the right mix in order to engage the customer. So I can see why it's going to be a constant battle to get the right resources, put them in the right places, use the right content, everything in order to stay connected with these customers.
CRMessentials.com is your website, correct? How do you prefer that people get a hold of you, Brent?
The quickest way is to hit me up on Twitter, just at Brent Leary, and my blog is brentleary.com.
And you could tell them the whole story behind that cool avatar you have there, right?
Hey, I get so many compliments. I wish I could take that and just put it in front of my face wherever I go, basically.
Hey, I already got a quote from you I'm putting on my wall. Speed thrills and lack of it kills.
It really does.
There you go.
Well, thank you, Brent. Thanks for being on the show with us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Brent. So again, the customer survey index, a social customer engagement index study, is going to be released in November. This is something SAP obviously sponsoring it 4 years in a row now.
Yeah,
we've
been a big advocates of social media, and especially social media as it applies to customer service. So in the early 2010, Social Media Today, the company approached us and asked us if we want to be part of this, and say, yeah, definitely. So we've been doing that ever since, every year.
Great. We've talked a lot about what's going on, the environment, the culture. We've talked about the findings from this survey. Now let's talk about the how-to. How to deliver an amazing customer experience. For that, we turn to an expert. He certainly is an expert. Shep Hyken is a customer service and experience expert. He is an award-winning author, a best-selling author. He is a frequent speaker, a professional speaker when it comes to the subject. And here's Shep Hyken now on the Customer Edge with his 5 ways to deliver an amazing customer experience.
Hi, Shep Hyken here, customer service expert and author of Amaze Every Customer Every Time. And we're going to talk about 5 ways to create customer amazement. Now, we're going to be talking about customer service, and it's important to note that customer service is not a department. It's a philosophy to be embraced by every person inside of any organization. And that means everyone, not just the people on the front line, because, again, customer service is not a department. It's a philosophy. Now, when I talk about customer amazement, I'm not talking about over-the-top, blow-me-away, wow levels of service. I mean, every once in a while, that's going to happen. But the key is, with customer amazement, is just to be a little bit better than average, but it has to be all of the time, consistent and predictably a little bit better than average. So let's get into 5 ways that you can create customer amazement. Number 1. Manage the first impression. Now, this isn't just the first time you meet somebody. It can be the 500th or 5 millionth time you see someone. What you're doing is you're setting the tone for whatever interaction is to follow. So it's the way you greet people, the way you walk up to them, and what your body language is saying, what your facial expression is saying, how you look people in the eye, how when you greet them and you shake their hand, is it a firm handshake or is it something weak that doesn't show confidence? It's how you address people, how you're dressed for success. Are you dressed appropriately or dressed for whatever the situation is? And how do you answer the telephone? Do you welcome people into the conversation, or do they feel as if they're an interruption? Manage the first impression. Number 2, demonstrate your knowledge and expertise. Knowledge and expertise creates credibility, and credibility creates confidence, and that's what customer amazement is all about. Know what it is about what you do, about what your company does, and even what your industry does. That's credibility. And by the way, if you don't have the answer, it's okay. Just know where to go to get the answer, because that's just as important. People might ask you a question. You might say, great question, but to make sure I get you the right answer, I want to do a little bit of research, and I promise to get back to you at a specific time. And then, by the way, you follow through. Bottom line is knowledge is power and credibility, and that's what creates customer amazement. Number 3, enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is, you've heard it, contagious. But if what you have is not enthusiasm, that's also contagious. Now, that doesn't mean you jump up and down and you act crazy. No, enthusiasm comes from your heart, and people like being around enthusiastic people. So have a joy for what it is that you do. Love working with people, and that's a big part of creating customer amazement. Number 4 is consistency. Consistency creates confidence. Confidence is credibility, and it's so important in creating customer amazement. Now, what I mean by consistency is an all-the-time, everyday effort to be your very, very best, especially when it comes to taking care of that customer. Think in terms of the famous actor Richard Burton, who would do his shows, and people would come back night after night to see him in his plays. They would come back show after show because he tried to do the very, very best that he could do every time he walked out on stage. As a matter of fact, he was known to say, I want to be so good tonight that I cheat the audience that was here the night before. Can you be that good? Can you be that consistent with your effort? And when you do, that's going to create customer amazement. And finally, number 5, show appreciation. Say thank you over and over again, because your customers want it and expect it. And you know what? It's a need that they have, that they know that you appreciate them. And it can be as simple as picking up the phone and calling the customer, or doing it in person if that's the appropriate thing. And how about just shooting an email or even a text if that's the way they like to be communicated with? Or take the personal approach and send a thank you note, which is an extremely powerful, personal way to say thank you. Bottom line is your customers want and expect to be appreciated. Well, there you have it. 5 ways to create customer amazement. You know what's interesting about this? These are all common sense ideas, but guess what? They're not always so common. But if you don't just practice one, but all 5 of these together, you'll be creating customer confidence, which, as I mentioned over and over again, creates customer amazement. So there you have it. Now, if you want to learn more about this and maybe read a bunch of articles, please be sure to visit my website, which is www.hyken.com. There you'll find much more information about what we do and over 250 articles that you're welcome to make copies of and share with your clients. So remember these 5 amazement principles. Thanks for watching. This is Shep Hyken reminding you to always be amazing.
Five great tips from Shep Hyken. You are watching The Customer Edge. This is a live monthly webisode. I'm Butch Stearns of the Pulse Network, alongside is Hanson Liu from SAP. A quick reminder for you that this program, this live program, we put on demand, and it's part of what feeds the Customer Edge community. You can go to customeredgetv.com and find the Customer Edge community there, and there you will find thought leaders. You will find all that you need, social engagement and collaboration from you, with you, and about you in this community, partly based on this show. What the Customer Edge is all about is a community where we strive to help you re-examine your customer experience that you're providing to your customers. So far, this show's been jam-packed, full of good nuggets here.
Yeah. And Shep, really, what he just shared, which is like you said, is common sense, right? But really, the devil's in the details. How do you actually do that? Do these things? I mean, it might be easy if you're a small company, small store. You control everything you do.
Right.
But when you're a company, you have thousands of employees. Scalability is a big issue.
What else stuck out with Shep? What else really sticks out with you as a how-to, as a real key?
I think the real key, like I said, is common sense. But really, how do you get to it, right? And from my perspective, there's probably 3 or 4 key items there. Number 1 is leadership, right? So really to deliver great experiences starts at the top. I mean, examples, we hear what the CEO does. Service is everything, right? It starts at the top, it's the leadership. And then it's the culture. Build the company, build the culture around delivering great service, great experience to customer. Number three, having the tools and infrastructure. So
Right.
having those pieces that allow and empower your employees to really deliver that service and that experience. And then number four is really how do you scale that all out into from hundreds to thousands.
And I thought the final point about showing appreciation, you really have to walk the walk and not just talk the talk, right?
Yeah.
You can't just throw out a standard thank you to everybody. Well, you can, and people do it all the time. But we see right through that. So talk a little bit more about how showing appreciation really needs to be personalized, or it needs to be more about the culture of your company, doesn't it?
It really needs to show that you really mean it, right? Like you said, thank
Right.
you.
Right.
Right? You really mean to say, I really appreciate you, Mr. Customer. And to really for your employees who's out there talking to your customer to do that, it really needs to be something that they believe in. The employee has to feel like they appreciate, they feel like they're doing the right thing, that this is the right thing to do, and they really appreciate the customer. And that it shows too.
All right, let's set up our next segment of the show and our next guest. She is Chrissy Espindola. She is the Director of Knowledge Management and Social Customer Support for T-Mobile. T-Mobile is an SAP client. They are a customer of yours, wrapping our arms around them, showing them a little love, practicing what we preach here, right? But you want to point to them, and we want to use them in this show, specifically as a company that is doing great customer engagement, great customer experience, and they have a three-step approach. Tease it a little bit. Chrissy's going to talk to us about it, but tell us what we're talking about here.
Well, specifically what they're doing with social media, customer service on social media, in terms of the approach that they take and why it's important for them to be out there and engage with their customers on social media.
All right, let's bring in Chrissy Espindola. I thought Butch Stearns rolled off the tongue. Chrissy, your name rolls off the tongue a lot easier than mine. Welcome to the show, Chrissy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Tell us a little bit about your role with T-Mobile, how long you've been with the company, and how do you view yourself as someone who's partly responsible for creating great customer experience?
So I've been with T-Mobile for 12 years now, and responsible for all of our knowledge base and social customer support, including our online chat strategy as well. And, you know, this conversation for me is music to my ears, and I think it's super fascinating when you talk about how customer expectations have changed over even just the past year alone. And I'll talk a little bit about our journey, but I think it's super interesting when you talk about what customers think the response time should be and where they were just a mere 10 months ago. So J.D. Power did a benchmark study about 10 months ago, and customers still reported that 30 hours was acceptable to respond to them on social media. So I think hearing now that the 30, 45-minute segments for their expectations is super fascinating. So let's get into my presentation, and we'll talk a little bit more about what we're doing at T-Mobile.
Yep. So, because Chrissy, why don't you tell us about your project at T-Mobile?
I'm sorry, say that again. I'm on a little bit of a delay.
Yeah, tell us about what you're doing at T-Mobile.
So, what we're doing at T-Mobile here we go here. So we have spent a lot of time looking at the scale of our operation and trying to make sure that we are able to compete within our marketplace. And about a year and a half ago, we took a look at where we were in the industry as it related to size and scale of being able to advertise on social. We knew that building out a social strategy and a social program, we could never compete with our competitors, if you will, in the wireless space as far as advertising dollars that we spend or give to the marketplace. And we looked at social as a way for us to be able to compete and really to be in the game.
So, Chrissy, talk about the three-step approach that you have to social media inside T-Mobile.
So our three-step approach is fairly simple and straightforward. So it's listen, engage, and resolve. And from our perspective, listening is making sure that we understand what our customers are saying, and we're using those insights to drive meaningful strategies, whether it's improvements in our products and services, and or how we're going to go to market with new devices, with new rate plans, et cetera. So we spend a lot of time using NetBase, which is a partner of SAP, to understand how our customers feel about our products and services.
So can you tell us, so you started back in 2012, is that when you started?
Yes.
And back then, why did you make the jump to start getting onto social?
So again, we knew that we couldn't compete in the marketing space with our competitors if we didn't have a platform where you could easily communicate and provide that brand messaging to our customers. So when we first took a look at the social space and where we needed to be, we realized we had a lot of cleanup, if you will, to do out there. So we really put a lot of focus into our program and making sure that we were allowing the conversations to happen, but also as they happened, making sure that we were engaging with our customers and resolving their issues.
So where are you now? How many? So it looks like, I think from talking to you before, it looked like you started out with about half a million fans. Where are you today?
We're at 5 million.
Wow. So is it replacing your call center now?
I wouldn't say it's replacing. I would say it's a parallel path. And I would say that for us, it's about engaging where our customers want to engage with us. So as we continue to grow this channel, we also see definitely a decrease in folks that are arriving in our more traditional voice channel.
Chrissy, for us as marketers today, tell me if you agree with this. Customer service is sort of the new marketing, isn't it? Doesn't it give us the opportunity to use social to deliver service and almost be marketers in that regard?
Well, it is what it is, right? It's like if you think about who the head of your social program is, it's your customer. So your customer now really leads your social program. So what they say about your brand is your marketing. It's your brand promise, and that's what you're delivering. So I think that, absolutely.
Great. So talk about how quickly you're sort of some of the KPIs that you're using to measure how you're doing in supporting customer now on social media.
Yeah, absolutely. So we look at a variety of KPIs, and one of our most important is our average speed to connect with a customer. And I heard you guys talking about this earlier and what the expectations of customers are. We use a 15-minute SLA with our customers, and we really truly do try and engage with them as soon as they engage with us. And our philosophy at T-Mobile is if you take the time to talk to us, we'll take the time to talk back. So we obviously have to build a program that can scale to do that. But at the same time, when that is your goal, you have to make sure that you have the right tools in place to be effective or efficient enough to do that. And that's really what we found with SAP. So previously, before we had SAP, we were manually working all of our brand channels and the different pages and sites there on our branded social channels. So we've seen great efficiencies with using the tool and continue to build out our program in that way.
Wow. So would you be willing to share some of the results that you've seen so far today?
Yeah, absolutely. So from an SAP perspective and using our Cloud for Social Customer Engagement, we've seen almost a 30% efficiency gain in where we were previously. Just a ton of how we've streamlined the experience has been amazing. And if you think about that in context, we've seen so much growth in our program. So if you think about where we were, 500,000 fans to 5 million, the growth there almost up 1,000%, which is incredible in a year and a half time. And we've been able to scale that without seeing any dips in our efficiency.
So, Chrissy, congratulations on your success at T-Mobile. I love the approach, as simple as it sounds: listen, engage, and resolve. Know who your audience is, understand what they're trying to say. They are an example, T-Mobile is, Hanson, of somebody who's had great success doing customer service and customer engagement the right way, aren't they? And using social to do it.
Yeah. And Chrissy mentioned the gain in efficiency, but I think there's also a benefit of really satisfying, delighting that customers as well. I mean, if customers are calling you on social, my question is, are you picking up the phone? Are you answering that? They're calling, right? So if you don't answer, guess what? They're calling someone else.
Chrissy, what advice do you have for other marketers, other brands, other companies to sort of, what are the questions you're asking yourself if you are doing it the right way, if you are on the right track, besides the results of your growing followers or your growing customers? How do you know if you're on the right track?
You start to see the conversation shift. So when we first started our program, our conversations were overwhelmingly, and I hate to say that, overwhelmingly negative. And as you put as we did, our blood, sweat, and tears into the program, you start to see the conversation shift, and you start to create those advocates within your social base. And then, in turn, they start to work for you and with you. And I think that what I always say in my programs at T-Mobile is, I know I'm successful when I don't have to talk about it anymore, when someone else is talking about it for me. And I think that that's the key to having a successful program, is when you can make that shift with your customers, and then they're helping you help your other customers.
She is Chrissy, get it straight, Butch. She is Chrissy Espindola from T-Mobile. Chrissy, how do you prefer that people get a hold of you? They can find you on Twitter, correct?
Absolutely.
And that's at Chrissy Espindola, right?
Just that easy.
All right. Thanks for your time, Chrissy.
And
Really
Chrissy,
appreciate
thanks
it.
for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. Chrissy joining us on the phone. We got through the connection that wasn't that great, but it was good enough on there. What key points you took away from what Chrissy had to say there?
Well, I think again, service is the new marketing, right? So, what better way to really deliver your brand promise and do it to the expectation than to deliver that great customer experience and that great customer service? And T-Mobile is doing just that.
So as we're about to wrap this up, let's talk about some key takeaways from this show. First of all, overall, when it comes to the relationship with your customers, when it comes to striving for great customer service, for, as Shep says, an amazing customer experience, give me the overall key that you've taken from this discussion today, Hanson?
Well, Butch, I like to think of it this way, right? Think of it as a personal relationship. So you start out with marketing. It's like flirting, right? So you go out and you're trying to make that connections with, hopefully find the right customers in this case, right? Yeah. And then when you found some right one, then you start the sales process, then you start the dating process, right? Now you're trying to put your best foot forward, you're trying to understand, is there a compatibility, is there a connection, right? And then once you get that customer, then you're delivering customer service. Now is the relationship part of it, right? It's marriage, is whatever you want to call it, right? So customer service is about delivering the service and delivering that expectation that you set forward in that first few phases. And of course, if you're like me, you want the relationship to last a long time, last for a lifetime.
Well, corny as this sounds, the difference from your example is, obviously we marry once, hopefully. Statistics say Americans marry more. But as a customer, you don't have to be monogamous here. Yeah. You can marry a lot.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So
yes.
The marriage example falls a little short in that.
I think the marriage is really, with the customers and the customer base is,
right. It's forming the personal relationships, as you said. I like the example. I like it a lot. All right, let's take one key takeaway from all the guests that we had. From Brent Leary, and again, a correction, I said that the survey is coming out later this year. It's coming out in 2014, the Social Customer Engagement Index study, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so that'll be coming out in 2014. But what did you take from Brent, one key from Brent?
I think one thing I took away, he mentioned we started back in 2010, and we definitely see that the early adopters, the people who jumped in early, are seeing great success. And it's showing now that it is not really just a hype. Social media is the mainstream, and customers are out there and expecting you to be out there.
And from Shep, Shep Hyken, 5 common sense tips on how to deliver amazing service. What did you take from him?
I think it's a good reminder. It's a good reminder for all of us, and especially for big companies. I think for a small mom and pop shop, for a smaller company, it might be something that is well understood, but when companies get big and we start thinking inside out, we tend to forget that the most important thing to a business are the customers, right? So who was it that said that really the most important thing that you do as a company is serving your customers? Right. I think that might have been one of the great things.
And that was the example, or the overall point from Chrissy's example with T-Mobile. They're practicing that. That's what they're focused on. The most important thing they're doing is the customer service and the customer engagement with their customers, right?
Yeah. And T-Mobile is doing that, and they're doing that now on social, right? So social media is becoming another channel that they're reaching out to their customers. So it's not only on the phone, on the web, but it's also on social as well. I think one key stat that I wanted to point out and share, I think you might mention it, is that 86% of the buyer will buy from company that they get better experience. In fact, they'll pay more for it. Right. And I think that's a great point, and it's really a call to action for companies out there to really stepped up on the customer service and customer experience.
Yeah, we talked about that stat before the show from Forbes. 86% of buyers will pay more for a better customer experience. Yeah. And the opposite stat is that in the same survey from Forbes, only 1% of customers feel that vendors are consistently meeting their expectations.
Yeah.
So think about that. 99 out of 100 customers don't believe that vendors are doing, or brands are doing the best job. But the 86%, almost 9 out of 10 of them that feel like they are, will pay more to do that. Right. I mean, that stat from Forbes tells you all you need to know about the value.
Yeah, and I got good news. The good news is I think companies are doing that. In fact, I think from an IBM study just this year that IBM just released, most of the CEOs are placing customer service, customer experience as their #1 priority.
Right.
For 2014.
Hanson Liu is the Director of CRM Product Marketing for SAP. For people that want to get a hold of you, how do they reach out to you?
Hanson Tweets on Twitter.
And that's where they can find you?
Yep.
Great job. Nice job on the show, Hanson.
Thank you.
Good to meet you and have you here in studio.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for being a part of this latest episode of the Customer Edge. And again, the Customer Edge community is at customeredgetv.com. If you tuned into this show late, you can find all the content from all of our monthly webisodes. You can find the thought leaders, the conversations, the social engagement. It's all there for you at customeredgetv.com. Until next time on the Customer Edge, for Hanson Liu, I'm Butch Stearns. We'll see you then.